Great. Okie dokie, I think that we are live. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Virtual Open Days performance webinar. We're really sorry that we can't meet you in person this year, but we hope that we'll be able to answer all of your questions that you have about performance. Please do put any questions you have in the live chat, and we will answer them for you as best as we can. And if at the end of the session you feel like we haven't answered all of the questions that you have, please do send us an email at performance@mus.cam.ac.uk and we will do our best to answer your question. I'm going to ask everybody here to introduce themselves and then we'll crack on with answering some of your questions. Maggie.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Maggie Faultless. I'm the Director of Performance at the Faculty of Music and oversee all the recitals that music students want to do as part of their university examinations. I help people arrange instrumental teachers, actually not only music students, so I can help you arrange teachers if you're studying other subjects or not taking the recital options. I'm also involved with the university's Collegium, the Period Instrument Orchestra. I'm associated with Girton and St John's colleges, and in my spare time I'm head of historical performance at the Royal Academy of Music and a co-leader of the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment.
Good morning, I'm Chloe Davidson and I'm the Executive Director at the Cambridge University Musical Society, and I work with all the presidents of our ensembles on sort of putting together artistic programmes and supporting them in their time at Cambridge. I also work at the faculty as the performance coordinator and help Maggie with the Collegium Musicum and Richard Corsten with the New Music Ensemble. And I also work as the coordinator for the Instrumental Awards Scheme. And I'm delighted to be here this morning. Oh, you've got your mute on.
Am I now unmuted? That's excellent. I'm Peter Foggitt. I'm very new to Zoom software and rubbish at using it. I'm also, when I'm not being rubbish at using Zoom, Director of Music at Emmanuel College, Director of Chapel Music at Emmanuel, and I'm one of the two coordinators of the Choral Awards scheme. When I'm not doing that, I play the piano and I'm also Director of Music at Hampstead Parish Church. I'm just finishing a PhD in composition, hopefully next week.
And I am Catherine. I work with Chloe in the performance team at the faculty, and I'm also sing in the college choir. So we have yet to have any questions in the live chat, so please do put them in there if you are watching and you have any burning questions. But I thought maybe to start off with, Maggie, you tell us a little bit about the CamRam scheme that's available.
Yes, a lot of people ask about this. It's a scheme, collaborative scheme between the University of Cambridge and the Royal Academy of Music for students in their second and third years to have lessons at the Royal Academy of Music. It's available for students who are taking recital options in the Tripos in the university exams. It's not open to everybody. It's competitive, but there are almost always enough places for people who are appropriate for the scheme. It can mean changing teachers if you don't already study with somebody at the academy, but it's a wonderful way of discovering what conservatoire life is like, and for a lot of performers who are thinking of going on to do a master's in performance after they graduate, this might seem a long way away now, but it'll come up on you, I assure you, then this CamRam scheme can be a really useful stepping stone.
Fantastic. And we do now have a couple of questions in the chat. So first of all, are there any opportunities for student conducting?
Yes, there are lots of opportunities for student conducting. The Cambridge University Musical Society has a competition for conductors, and we have many applicants each year, and the places are sort of highly sought after because it allows them to work with our professional conductors who come to Cambridge and they work as assisting the conductors and get a really good insight into the sort of the professional position of being an assistant conductor. They also have their own ensemble to conduct, so they get lots of experience of just hands-on conducting, which is of course what you need to do. It's just do as much of it as possible. Apart from CUMS, there are lots of other orchestras, the Cambridge University Symphony Orchestra, for example, that's completely conducted by student conductors. And Cambridge really does encourage the entrepreneurial side of sort of getting your own orchestra together. For example, a student a couple of years ago started the Mahler Orchestra, which was extremely ambitious, but was very successful. And we also have conducting workshops as part of the Practicing Performance series that Maggie is the artistic director for. So we have visiting professional conductors to come and give workshops and work with you then.
It is really a fantastic place to try out conducting as well, with so many college orchestras and concerts and choirs and student-run events and festivals, the Gilbert and Sullivan Society, the Opera Society, all these sort of things. They all need conductors, and there are a lot of people around keen to do it, and you'll find your fellow students very willing to let you have a go. They might offer you advice, but actually people are very generous with conductors. I think they really encourage them. And I know that Peter might like to say something about how even at chapel choir level with professional directors, that they will also encourage senior organ scholars and others to conduct parts of chapel services when appropriate. Is that right, Peter?
Yeah, particularly now, we used to have a course in Cambridge until last year, the Masters in Choral Conducting, but that's been discontinued, which has rather freed up an amount of work with college choirs for people who want to do conducting. And generally those opportunities are made available to people who are already part of the choir, who are interested in learning a bit more about conducting or getting some sort of experience in it. And yeah, there are so many opportunities in Cambridge to conduct. I think you would find it hard to find a situation where people would say, no, actually I'm not interested, because generally people are. And that's reflected in the amount of concerts and things that are going on, although I think we'll probably come to that later.
So much. Next question is someone wondering what exactly the choral scholarship auditions entail, particularly with regards to COVID-19.
Yes, we normally what the choral scholarship procedure is that at some point in the year preceding you coming up to Cambridge as an undergraduate, or indeed as a postgraduate, you would express an interest either before or after you get your academic place to the director of a choir. And a lot of time people apply to the college already knowing something about what that choir is doing. So if you're particularly interested in singing with a certain choir, you would make an academic application to that college, and that's what we encourage you to do. Once you've got your place, you then, about a month later, apply to the Choral Awards scheme, putting the college at which you have an offer first on your list, and then there's a bunch of other colleges you can put beneath that. So if the college at which you have your offer doesn't want you in its choir, someone else on your list may well want you in their choir. So we encourage you to put a list in the order in which you want to be heard by those people. At the auditions, you sing a prepared piece, and then there are brief examinations of sight reading ability and various other things to do with your capacity in terms of your range. The COVID-19 situation, we have absolutely no idea what things are going to look like in March of next year. And at the moment, because I like to keep my blood pressure relatively low, I'm just refusing to think about it. Hopefully we will have an easier time of it by the time we get to next March. If we don't, I suspect we could end up, this is by no means official, but we could end up in a position where we have to do it by Zoom or something similar. But I'm really hopeful And in fact, yesterday we made the room bookings at the music faculty for March of 2021. So we are hopeful that by 2021 we'll be running a normal scheme with the normal procedure. So it's a very long answer, but if you want to know more about that scheme and what the auditions entail and what the various choirs do, there are 3 documents available on the portal. There's a video with some interviews with members of choirs. There's a little 2-page thing which tells you just what each choir does each week. And then there's a longer document with 1 or 2 pages about each choir, which should give you, hopefully, all the information you need at this stage.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And then just on in the same vein, we have a question that says, can girls applying to King's College be awarded a scholarship for King's Voices, seeing as they can't audition for the main King's Choir?
Yes. The other thing that sometimes people do with King's Voices and John's Voices, which are 2 choirs that rehearse. King's Voices, incidentally, actually, the information that you see about King's Voices is almost certainly now wrong. King's Voices from next year will be singing a service on Wednesdays and rehearsing on Mondays, and that information has just come through. People at St John's Voices rehearse on Thursdays and sing on Mondays. Sometimes people who sing with those choirs also want to sing with another choir, and so they will apply to one of those and then sing to another once they come to Cambridge. But if you just want to sing 1 service a week and you want to go to King's, then that is exactly the right thing to do. It's an amazing experience.
Thank you. And then again, building on from that, are there choral experiences in Cambridge outside of the formal college chapel choirs?
Yes, I remember. I was here as an undergraduate it's now 14 years ago, and I think the situation has probably got worse in terms of the sheer volume of music. It is overwhelming. I remember one Saturday night not being able to choose between 7 concerts that I could have gone to, all of which were amazing and run by people who are now professional musicians. It's a terrifying range of things that you can get up to. What you will find is that you will have too much to choose from. And if you want to participate in something, somebody will definitely ask you to do it. And if you want to set up your own choir, then that's very much open to you. And there are plenty of people who've left Cambridge having set up their own choirs. The most famous example is probably the Monteverdi choir, which was set up by John Eliot Gardiner when he was an undergraduate. And he was not, incidentally, studying music, nor was he in a college choir. So that gives you some indication of how broad that particular scene is in Cambridge.
I think, yes, I'm just going to add that alongside a lot of student-led choirs and opportunities that there is another university choir called the Chamber Choir, which is very interesting, which is just project-based. That's usually directed by a professional. It actually often collaborates with the Collegium, with the Period Instrument Orchestra, and there have been performances of the Monteverdi Vespers, of the Bach B minor Mass, of the Bach St John Passion, of Handel's opera Acis and Galatea, in the last decade, where there's been collaborations between university ensembles for big scale projects like that.
And also to add that there is the Cambridge University Symphony Chorus. So if you would like to sing in a big choir, there is that option, and they sing in King's Chapel, Ely Cathedral, and further afield as well. And they do the big, Verdi requiems and the big works. So that's wonderful if you want to be part of a very big choir.
A question about organ scholarships and instrumental awards, and whether it's possible or feasible to be able to do both of them, like one alongside the other.
Organ scholarships and your commitment to chapel choirs, obviously very clear. The instrumental awards is chamber music, where actually your rehearsals and your coaching and your concert activity is timetabled largely by the students themselves. The instrumental award scheme, Chloe and her team arrange concerts at various very prestigious venues. So there are some time sensitive events. Those concerts usually take place after chapel choirs, because it can be the case that not only organists but also choral scholars who are also instrumentalists have on occasion taken on instrumental awards as well. You need to be really good at time management, as well as very talented at your instruments as you're singing. But it is possible, and if it's really what you want to do alongside your degree, I would recommend it. Your social life might not be quite as wide-ranging as if you'd got lots of other spare time, and you might not be able to play for a Cambridge University first team in sports, but it is possible, and in many ways that really suits a lot of people who don't quite know what they want to specialise in when they come up to their first term at Cambridge.
Thank you very much. And again, in that same vein, we have a question about whether or not you need to be studying music to be considered for choral awards, instrumental awards, organ scholarships.
Definitely not, and it's a lovely opportunity for the non-music students to actually meet, to come together with other students to play at this sort of level, and postgraduates as well. So it's a lovely mix of postgraduates, undergraduates, and all different courses.
Obviously, some academic courses have more time commitments associated with them in terms of fixed timetable. Medics, for example, at certain years, and scientists who have a lot of lab work in the afternoons. But one just has to work around that with timetabling rehearsals and finding other ways of committing to rehearsals and projects with your fellow students.
Thank you. Would it be possible, due to the current circumstances, to shed some light on what will be happening with the organ scholarship audition process?
We're working on it. We're aware that everything is up in the air. We're hoping that we might be able to get something out but hopefully in the next few weeks. Obviously, things are very difficult regarding travel and all the rest of it. My colleague Andy is working very hard in collaboration with our friends in Oxford to put together some sort of plan. What I would recommend right now is that you, if you are considering applying for an organ scholarship, you waste no time at all. And if you can get in contact with the local church and get in to do some practice, or if your school has an organ, or if your parents mysteriously have acquired a lot of money, you could buy one. Whatever it takes to get hold of an organ right now would be a great move. I think we'll be looking to do them as close to the original date as we possibly can, and keep watching this space, because we intend to make an announcement just as soon as we're able to.
Could I say something in general, actually, about audition processes and interviews at the moment? We all feel rather isolated, and of course we've been trained for the face-to-face interview and meeting as being absolutely key. It is key and it is important, but there are other ways of us meeting you and us getting to know you. And we're also developing skills, I hope, in finding out ways of being able to understand the very best of what you have to offer, which is always what auditions are about. We're not out there to catch you out. So anything that you offer us, any dialogue that you have with us, whether it's face-to-face via email or these sort of Zoom meetings or other platforms, if you send videos for things, whether it's for Cambridge or all sorts of other activities, we're all sitting there really just trying to work out your very best qualities. And I think that remains the same, whatever the medium is through which we have to do that.
Are choral scholarships compatible with more intense degrees such as veterinary medicine?
The handbook, which I think is somewhere on the Open Day portal, will be able to tell you about that. There are some choirs, I suspect, that don't admit members of the choir who are studying for a degree that requires a lot of time like that. As we were saying earlier, if you happen to have lab work during the afternoon until 5:30, but you have a 4:15 rehearsal every day, obviously those things are incompatible. So it's worth looking at the handbook. And if you can't see from the handbook, then directors of music at the different colleges are delighted to help you out with that, particularly if you have an idea of the sort of agreement you're looking at.
Lots of questions about choral scholarships this morning. Can you be awarded a choral scholarship for a college that you don't go to?
You can be awarded a choral place at a college that you don't go to. There are three terms that we use in Cambridge, one of which is choral scholarship, and that refers specifically to people who apply to a college, get a place at that college, and then are awarded a place to sing in the choir of that college in a row. A choral exhibition is held by someone who has a place at that college, who then comes up in October and auditions to sing in the choir and joins then, that is to say, just before the start of Michaelmas term or at the start of Michaelmas term. And then there are choral volunteers, and that applies to someone who has an academic place at another college, who then ends up singing with a different college's choir. So yes, there are all sorts of ways, and through the March process, if you don't get into your first choice college choir, but then you can get accepted by a different college, or if you don't apply through the March process at all, you can come up in Michaelmas and sing to whoever you want then. So yeah, there are lots of possibilities.
Thank you. What standard do you have to be to achieve a music award? Someone who's done a performance diploma in piano this year, but has never performed piano as part of a chamber ensemble before.
Very interesting. I think that grade 8 distinction or diploma level is probably a very good place to start, and a lot of the candidates for the instrumental award schemes are indeed at that level, whether or not they've actually got those qualifications. It is interesting if people haven't had chamber music experience. I think the fact that you want to have chamber music experience would make me want to ask about how you listen to music, and I find that very interesting. So I would say do apply, and that there is a chamber music round in the audition process where we listen to your potential for doing collaborative music making. But if you've got the chance to do some chamber music before you apply and do auditions, then I would highly recommend that, because it's certainly a different skill, additional skill from that of being a solo pianist.
And another question, what's the chamber coaching like at Cambridge?
Fantastic. I'm going to say that, aren't I? But we have people coming up to Cambridge. They're not all Cambridge residents. Melanie Ragg often coaches the Wind Quintet. She's a professor of oboe at the Royal Academy of Music. Robert Cohen has been up, the Endelian String Quartet, the Armatis Trio, the Ligeti String Quartet, James Boyd, the viola player and co-founder of Music Works, a real chamber music guru, I think is the word for James, works with players. Robin Michael has been, John Healy used to do a lot. I'm occasionally seen there. Chris Lawrence runs a brass group. And if we have any visiting guests for the Practicing Performance series, we often encourage them to stay on for a Thursday evening and coach the IAS groups as well. And Andrew West for the pianist, who is another professor at the Royal Academy of Music. Chloe, have I forgotten people?
No, I think you've remembered them all. And there's a very short video on the Open Day pages that has two of the students who have been through the scheme for the last 3 years, and they talk about the coaching. Anita specifically does, and the coaches can transform a group in just one session, can't they? I mean, it's wonderful to watch.
It's very exciting, and actually there is the chance to have coaching from the same person for more than one session. It's not just like a masterclass, so you really can develop a relationship with a coach, a mentor. And I stayed in touch with the person who coached my IAS quartet over the whole course of his life, actually, from having left Cambridge. It was a very special relationship. So
thank you. What perks do you get if you are awarded a choral scholarship?
That's such a good question. It varies from college to college a great deal, actually. There are some colleges that provide dinner I'd say that actually probably most colleges have some sort of dining rights associated with being a choral scholar. And that will normally involve formal hall following services, which might be once or twice or even 3 times a week. There are probably 2 choirs, I think there might be 3, that pay fee. But that's quite uncommon, and there will be mention of that in the handbook. So do look at that.
You froze just when you were about to say, but just when you were saying the most interesting bit of that last sentence.
Ah, did I? Was the interesting bit about fees or about or about food?
No, we did food. It was the next bit.
Right, great. There are a couple of choirs. I think there may be 3 choirs that pay fees for concerts, but it will say so in the handbook. What else do you get? You get singing lessons. We have a squadron of incredible singing teachers around Cambridge, many of whom have been choral scholars and now have careers as solo and consort singers. So they are exactly the sort of people you want to have lessons with. And then there are things like tours, which are generally funded partially or in whole by colleges. And depending on the year and the choir and the inclination of the tour manager and whether or not there's an enormous international pandemic going on, there are various touring opportunities. There's a lot about this in the handbook. And I think the thing to remember is that it varies hugely from college to college, but you can generally expect free food, free wine, and a reasonable level of chat.
Actually, could I add something from the point of view of a violinist in a professional orchestra in London? Another thing that happens are collaborative projects with professional orchestras, both recordings and concerts. And actually, there's been some fantastic things between the orchestra that I play with and a number of Cambridge choirs, and other orchestras have other associations. So you'll really get a foothold to work in the professional situation like that very early on in your career.
Can students not studying a music degree still take part in ensembles, for example, orchestras?
Yes, they can. Yes, and we have a very all the comes ensembles have a very good mix of students studying all different subjects. So absolutely, and also the societies other than the comes ensembles welcome all students. So definitely.
There's nothing cliquey about being a music student and having sort of first dibs on everything. Actually, that's also true to say. People study music because they're passionate about studying music. And often that goes alongside singing and instrumental playing and composing and everything and conducting, but it doesn't necessarily do that. Peter's mentioned really famous people who didn't study music here. A lot of my professional colleagues I met in Cambridge, but they didn't all study music. So that's not a defining or divisive thing at all.
Absolutely. Are there any ways for first year music students to take lessons in London, possibly at the college or academy?
This is, yes, instrumental lessons for... Well, obviously, you can have lessons, depending on what subject you're taking or what you're doing, you can have lessons with anybody, and that includes music students. Unlike some universities, we do not prescribe your instrumental teacher. A lot of people have teachers that they've been studying with that they wish to continue studying with. Some people come to Cambridge and want to change. And if you come to Cambridge and want to change and haven't been recommended anybody by your former teacher, then I will help you find the right sort of person at the right level for your playing or your singing, for your time commitment, for your ambitions, and all sorts of other factors. So we would always sit down and meet or talk on the phone or Zoom in order to ascertain what you want. So if you're studying music and are taking recital in the TRIPOS, the 3-part university exam for your degree, if you're taking a recital as part of your TRIPOS examinations, your college are obliged to pay for a certain number of lessons. But the person that you have those lessons with is really up to you. It may be discussed in conjunction with me. I'll certainly want to know who it is, and your Director of Studies will want to know, because your college will be paying for them. A lot of students do travel to London. I'll be honest, I don't know in the next couple of years whether quite so many people will be travelling to London. Some people do study with professors from the London colleges, although I have to say, just on the side, the London colleges do not have the space to host private lessons there, so they're not venues for private lessons. If you're on the Camram scheme, you can have lessons actually physically at the academy. But otherwise, I would help music students with finding an instrumental teacher, and indeed I get emails from people all over the university, all years, all colleges, asking for advice about teachers, and I can often help them as well.
Thank you so much, Maggie. We've talked a little bit already about instrumental awards and the standard that you need to be to apply for one of those. But will people of a grade 8 standard be considered for a choral scholarship, or do you need to be diploma?
We're actually not that bothered about grades. The things we're interested in are, can you sing? Does it sound nice when you sing? That's the first and most important thing, because we all want to have choirs that sound nice. The second thing is that you just need to be able to demonstrate either already a developed capacity for sight reading, or the ability to learn quite quickly to do that. And you'll find that also there, within the great panoply of colleges and choirs, there are various standards expected at interview, that if you're applying for a college choir that sings 7 services a week, you're going to have pretty good sight reading from the get-go, because there's just such a huge volume of music to get through. If you're applying to a college choir that sings 1 service a week, you're going to have a bit more time during the week to rehearse and to look at the music independently. So your sight reading might not need to be so great if you're going to one of those. You'll find that when you arrive and start singing, that your sight reading improves. So we really are looking for potential on that front, and similarly vocal potential. There are plenty of people who at audition present quite a nice voice, and then 3 years later leave the university with really highly developed singing, which is terrific.
Thank you. Are there options for jazz improvisation performance?
Yes, there's actually, Chloe will talk about the Comes Jazz Orchestra, but there are lots of jazz ensembles around, also all sorts of music. There's a university gamelan society. You can play viols and recorders, or you can do hip hop or folk or just about anything you name. There will be things to, there's a Chinese orchestra, all sorts of things. But the Chloe, would you like to talk about Cujo?
Well, Cujo, the Cambridge University Jazz Orchestra, is an associate ensemble with Comes, and they do wonderful gigs throughout the year. They're part of the Jazz Festival in Cambridge, and perform in West Road and in Pizza Express in London, and and have lots of gigs. So they are great, and there's lots of improvising, obviously, in that orchestra. And we had a practicing performance masterclass with the head of jazz at the Royal Academy last year and the year before. So that sort of, I think we want to nurture that aspect as well. So the jazzers have more support in that area.
You can also offer a jazz recital as a university exam as well. It's not limited to Western classical music. Jazz, you could also offer all sorts of other genres of music from other cultures. We have music theatre. I would love somebody to do a gamelan ensemble recital, for example, or all sorts of things. So it's really open to all musics.
And lots of the colleges have jazz ensemble as well. I think Fitz and Churchill. There are lots of groups.
There's quite a famous jazz prize at St John's College as well.
To what extent do you think you should take college choice? To what extent do you think you should take in college choice in relation to music opportunities, especially if you're not going to take a music degree?
I don't think you should. sorry, I think Maggie's probably better equipped to answer this than I am, but I just know so many people across Cambridge who are incredible musicians, and when you work across all sorts of colleges, you turn up to one college and you see people playing in that college orchestra who definitely don't go there. And that is absolutely fine, and it's a thing that's encouraged. But sorry, Maggie.
No, you're absolutely right. I was just thinking that it is one of the biggest questions, and can seem very daunting, isn't it, as how to choose a college. I'm sure there are other videos online about that, but I would ask, come up with a big list of the things that you might think about when choosing a college, and how many students. The size of the college obviously sometimes dictates the amount of music that goes on, because there are just going to be perhaps more of everything at a very big college, but it doesn't really go further than that. I think some colleges have slightly more music professors there, music staff, but it's really just one of a long list. I hesitate to give you my advice as to how you choose a college. It's very personal, isn't it, Peter? Did you find that?
I actually was totally naive applying to Cambridge. I know that everyone says that, but I really was. And I happened to get a choral scholarship in a place at my first choice college, having not done a great deal of singing before, but being quite good at sight reading. And I think if you fancy doing a certain experience and it's that clear to you, I sang as an undergraduate in a very high commitment college choir, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. But if there's nothing specific like that, then as Maggie says, there are so many variables, whether your college has a number of music professors, or whether you fancy a college that has lots of new architecture, or if you need it to be on the river, or to have ducks, or to have a building that looks like a typewriter. There are all sorts of particulars within Cambridge colleges, and the choice is quite daunting, but spend a lot of time thinking about it and see what you think.
I don't think there are bad choices of Cambridge colleges, put it like that. There are just differences.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the music is available for all, so you will have the opportunity to join any of these ensembles, whatever college you are at.
What sort of chamber groups are formed for the instrumental award scheme?
Well, the most obvious are string quartets, piano trios, piano quartets, wind quintets, brass quintets. There are some more unusual combinations if we have very talented students who don't fit into those. So we are enterprising, but there comes a point when actually there does need to be sufficient repertoire for a particular combination of people to play, which is partly why we don't encourage percussionists, double bass players and harps to audition in the normal scheme of things, just because there is not so much repertoire. But if you don't fit in to one of those slightly more conventional chamber music sort of formats, then there are just so many other opportunities to play chamber music in the university, particularly in slightly more varied ensembles. For example, you could do a lot of chamber music in the new music ensemble, because obviously in the 20th, 21st century repertoire, there's sometimes some more flexibility than the canonic repertoire of the 19th century. But we have had a flute, cello and piano this year, which actually played some conventional piano trio repertoire, but with the flute playing the violin part. That worked really well because those people got on really well and were really keen, were very passionate about that. At the moment, we don't do anything really before Mozart and Haydn, although string quartets obviously could play Purcell and Bach, or anybody else could if they wanted to. It does tend to centre around 19th century chamber music, but with exceptions. And outside the IAS scheme, there's chance to do absolutely anything you want. So in that sense, we're not trying to constrict you.
I think often with the Cum's first orchestra, the Cambridge University Orchestra, where you sort of have the top instrumentalists of the university playing with that, often you find that chamber groups are made from that orchestra when they've sort of been playing together. And there are lunchtime concerts every Tuesday in term time in West Road Concert Hall. And sometimes those chamber groups perform there. They'll sort of get together to work on a programme for those concerts. So so that's a lovely thing you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, and continuing on that, do you stay in the same chamber music group throughout your whole time at Cambridge, or once you've been sorted into a group after audition?
You can stay with them, and some people do. The Mistral Wind Quintet, I think, stayed together even out after Cambridge, which is very interesting. But you don't have to. We do put you in a group for the first year, because otherwise I think it would take the whole of the first term to sort of do all sorts of combinations. But after the first year, you're free either to stay in the group, to re-audition as an individual, to stay with part of your group with other people. So no, it's not in that sense. You don't tie yourself down to one chamber music ensemble for 3 years.
Great, thank you. And we've actually got a couple of questions about the application process for the Instrumental Award Scheme. So I wondered if either Maggie or Chloe, you'd just be able to give us a really quick overview of how that works.
I think just after you've received your offer, so sort of Christmas time, January, then the application form needs to be filled out by the end of February. The date is on the website, so the full application details are on the main undergraduate website, which is linked from the Faculty of Music. So you fill out your application form then, and the details of the repertoire will be there by that stage. And then the audition will be at the very end of September, a week before you start at Cambridge. And we're in contact with you in between those times, of course. Would you have anything to add, Maggie, to that?
No, that sounds very good. And as ever, we're hoping that all that will run smoothly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest, and this year we are possibly running the first round by video. Maybe we're just discussing that, because obviously the different options, but that is the normal scheme of things.
And we have a question that, is there an emphasis at Cambridge on chamber music and choral music rather than big orchestral works?
There's a complete mixture. And I think if you ask any instrumentalist or singer if they've kept a diary of what they do, there'll be such an incredible mixture that my professional colleagues just don't sustain that degree of flexibility and of differences of repertoire, and from solo recitals to singing in Mahler 2 to doing music theatre to writing your own opera and then producing it and conducting it. There's everything, and you can make your own balance as long as you fulfill your commitments to anything that you've committed to. It's not a free-for-all in that sense. So I think this good balance between being committed to your choir or your principal orchestra or your chamber music group, where you're well prepared, that's it. In that sense, it's not a free-for-all. You can't come and go and miss this and that service and rehearsals as you feel like it, but there are plenty of opportunities for all sorts of things.
And lots of different societies. For singing, there's cadenza and soft crunchy landing. I think it's just a new ensemble that started. So it's definitely not sort of all the traditional Western classical music that you would expect. There is a really, really good mix. And if there isn't a society that, then you can set one up yourself. So there's lots and lots of options.
There's then a question that, are there any scholarships for people who are grade 8 distinction at guitar, saxophone or in drama?
Well, I think a lot of colleges would give you a scholarship and assistance for music lessons, maybe not a formal scholarship, but there are awards and way of getting lessons, but there aren't any university, sort of, as it were, formal university awards as far as I know. Does anybody know what happens in drama? That's maybe a different area.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's a scholarship, but Cambridge, rather like in music, there are so many opportunities for acting and improv and comedy. If you can think of something to do with drama, there will be a society that caters to that interest. So while there's not perhaps direct financial assistance for that sort of thing, although there will be, as Maggie says, within colleges, the number of opportunities available to you is enormous. So effectively, the opportunity level is the same. It's just your minus a couple of £100.
And just a quick note for, actually, there's a couple of people saying that they joined late. We will put a version of this Q&A and yesterday's Q&A up on the on our YouTube channel after this is finished, which will have a combination of all and hopefully answer all questions that you have. But there's also lots of information on the website which you can catch up with, and lots of things about the instrumental awards and things. Question about the time commitment for an instrumental award scheme place in the week.
Well, we encourage everybody to have at least one and preferably two fairly substantial rehearsals. I think that's reasonable in terms of Cambridge terms are only 8 weeks long. You might be able to be up for a little bit longer. But I think, honestly, in terms of really developing a style, that's probably reasonable. And then there's coaching on top of that and some performances. There are maybe moments in the term where actually 2 rehearsals is just too many, and one really long, really focused one could be just as good if everybody does a lot of practice. Groups have different ways of arranging their time, but that's what I would encourage as a starting point.
Question, are there opportunities for soloists to sing the Messiah with university choirs?
Yes. And I think more generally, even if we were to expand our repertoire outside just one piece, there are loads of opportunities to sing solo and to play solo concertos. And if it happens in the space of a certain year that you really fancy singing solo in something, it's quite possible just to arrange that performance yourself and get a group of people together to do it. So yeah, there are loads of opportunities for solo singing, and those come from different sources. They come from within the choirs themselves, and there are also things that are externally organised at a university level or by groups within the university. So yeah, tons of opportunities.
Okay. And Chloe, I wonder if this is a moment just to quickly touch on the competitions that are available through the Cambridge University Musical Society.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. We have 3 competitions. The conducting competition that I mentioned earlier, and then there's a concerto competition, which gives opportunities for students to perform concertos of probably about sort of 5 positions a year. So, and they perform with the different comes ensembles, and the winners will perform with a professional conductor, which is a wonderful opportunity for them. And then we have the composition competition, judged by Robin Holloway and Richard Corston, and the winner is able to perform a work for a symphony orchestra for the following year. So that's...
Thank you. Is the choral scholarship just for people that like to sing classical music rather than those who do pop and theatre, etc.?
There are sort of 2 answers to that question. Yes, in as much as the chapel choirs sing sacred art music repertoire. So if you join a chapel choir, what you would expect to sing is music principally from the 16th to the 21st centuries. There's a lot of new music gets performed in chapel choirs, but it is all more or less within the art music tradition. However, 2 years ago, I had someone walk through my door for an audition who is a really great Irish folk singer who has become a totally terrific choral scholar. And I think if you are interested in singing in the classical style and willing to learn how to do that and have some experience perhaps, then that's great. Outside of that, there are choirs that cater to other styles and other tastes. There are, as Chloe was saying, close harmony groups and show choirs, and there's also plenty of opportunities at the ADC, the student theatre, for singing in musical theatre and things like that there. So if you find that a chapel choir isn't quite to your tastes, you'll definitely find something else that is.
And I do know one singer who sings in a chapel choir and also does music theatre. So she has to switch her voice between two voice types, which is interesting. It does happen occasionally that somebody who has a really big operatic 19th century sort of operatic voice might find it slightly more difficult to fit into the choral tradition, but there will be certainly lots of opportunities to do big opera roles in Cambridge if that's what you want to do.
Question again about the IAS. I am joint first study at both piano and violin, and was wondering whether you can get 2 instrumental awards for both instruments.
It would be possible, just audition.
And are there places for non-music students to practice instruments and singing outside of their accommodation as not to disturb other students?
A lot of colleges have practice rooms, yes. And if you're in an ensemble, there are some opportunities to work at West Road if you're in an IAS ensemble, but mostly it would be in other venues in college, I would say. Or if you're doing a concert at an external venue in Cambridge, then you could obviously have rehearsals there. It's a mixture, but there is not a university performance venue with 24 bespoke practice rooms. If anybody'd like to buy us one, that would be great.
How common would you say it's for students both studying and not studying a music degree to go to postgraduate conservatoire?
Quite common. There was a few years ago, where I think a dozen students from the music faculty were awarded postgraduate places at conservatoires, either in the UK or abroad. And that's just people studying music. So it is quite a well-known progression, I would say. Quite a famous progression, quite a well-known one, and certainly normal, yes.
One of the things that I think you find quite a lot when you go to music college in London as a postgraduate is the sheer volume of people who are around, whom you recognise from Cambridge. And a lot of the time it's not the case that necessarily one goes, and I realise that what I'm about to say sounds absolutely terrifying when you're 17 or 18 and just looking at applying to Cambridge, but a lot of the time what you see is that people will graduate from here and then take 1 or 2 or even 3 or 4 years out and then appear in music college. And there's still this sort of community of people who have been at both places. So even if one doesn't end up going directly, there's still a well-trodden path, as Maggie says.
Can one balance commitment to a college chapel choir with membership of a sports society, for example, a football team?
Yes. I remember there was someone in my year of undergrad who tried to do rowing as well as singing lots of services every week. And that is also possible. It is possible to compete at the very highest level and still do that. Unfortunately, he wasn't very good at getting up early in the morning. So that sort of put paid to his early morning rowing expeditions. But there are absolutely loads of people who do things like rowing, which is very popular, or rugby or football or any one of the other university sports. You can get a quarter blue at Cambridge for playing tiddlywinks as well, if that's your sport of choice. So yeah, there are loads of things, and it depends on how much time you need to spend singing and how much time you need to spend on your degree. But provided you have a decent diary, then it is all possible.
Excellent. I think we're now come to our last question. So if anybody feels that we haven't answered the question, then please post it in the chat again. I'm sorry if I have missed it. But the question is how does the Choral Award application fit into the overall UCAS application?
On your UCAS application, now, I'm not a member of my college's academic staff, so what I can say to you about this is purely informal, which is just put it in there, put in that you're interested in singing in the choir, that you've got this experience, that you've perhaps played these instruments or sung in this situation, and that that will be of interest to your college's admissions or senior tutor. Then after you've got the academic place, all being well, then you make the separate application to sing with the college's choir. But it's not the case, unfortunately for us, that if you apply and say, by the way, I'm an amazing singer, then you immediately get given a place. We're very strict academically, so that's the first thing you have to do.
And do most choral scholars remain in the choirs for their entirety of their degree, or do some choose to quit their scholarship after 1 year?
If you quit your scholarship after 1 year, then unfortunately we have to set the lions on you. You get chased. No. If you quit the scholarship after 1 year, it's just slightly annoying for us. We encourage you to take the choral scholarship for 3 years. And when you are awarded the scholarship, it is, or the award, or whatever you get, it is on the basis of 3 years. And I think this actually touches on one of the most important things about musical life in Cambridge, that it is symbiotic, that whether you're singing in a choir or playing in an orchestra or doing any other form of music making, that we rely on each other to be committed for the duration of the project, whether that is one concert or one rehearsal, or in the case of a college choir, something that has been going on in some cases for hundreds of years. And to have that sort of continuity, to continue the tradition and to develop other people, because other people are as reliant on you as you are on them, for their development and for the development of the choir as a whole, it is really encouraged that you should commit for all 3 years. Which isn't to say that if you want to try it, you shouldn't apply and think, well, I could quit after a year. But that really is frowned upon, because we rely on you as much as you rely on us. And it's important we're all able to take that kind of trust in each other.
In the same way that you don't sort of move colleges every year or move universities every year either. I think there comes a point that it is a commitment, and one has thought about it very carefully before taking it on. I think that's the interesting thing. And the same is true of membership of some of the orchestras as well, or the IAS scheme, that yes, we hope people will be committed for the period of time that we ask them to be committed for. It can be just 1 week for a concert, or as you say, Peter, it can be 3 years for choir.
Great, so I think we're getting very close to the end now. So thank you ever so much, everybody, for tuning in today and asking us all of your questions. Please remember, if you do have any other questions, you can drop us an email at performance@mus.cam.ac.uk, and we will answer any questions, not just to people interested in applying for music. If you're interested in just performing at the university at all, then do get in touch and we will do our best to help you. We have a lot of experience with lots of students studying all kinds of things. Just want to ask the three of you if you have anything to say, anything you think we've missed before we wrap up.
No, thank you for joining us, and yes, do get in touch if you have other questions.
Fantastic.
There's a question that's just appeared about keyboard skills on the YouTube chat.
Yes.
To which I think the answer is that you should ask the college directly about the standard they expect, because the variance between keyboard skills, some colleges have keyboard skills tests at entry and some don't, so it's worth just asking the college directly.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also tune into the Study Music Q&A this afternoon, which is at 2 p.m. again on the YouTube channel. And if you've got any questions about applying for music specifically, they will do their best to answer those for you. Thank you ever so much to Maggie and Chloe and Peter for your time today, and I hope you've all found it interesting and informative.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all so much. Bye.
Bye.